The hashtag on Twitter is Monday Special KE. On double 2422, you can text us. Ogutu Migori says, hi Hussein, I have not had a plan put in place to fight corruption, which is the worst headache in Kenya. Also on double 2422, I have Jomo Jijin Mukurweni. Jubilee Manifesto, Hussein, seems realistic and achievable. Given time, they can turn things around to benefit us. Kenyans politics aside, empty rhetorics achieve nothing. We keep talking to us. Our guest in studio tonight, below Cairo, is the Senator, Mandera County. We also have the Director General of the Kenya Vision 2030 Delivery Secretariat, that is Dr. Julia Muya. Thank you so much for making time for us both. Is there anything that immediately strikes you about what you saw in the Jubilee Manifesto when it was being launched? What would you say is the immediate take-home for you, positive or negative? I'll start with you, below.
Thank you, Hussein. If you know what a manifesto is a political wish list. You would expect that this would be lofty documents with very ambitious programs. But when you look at Jubilee in the last 5 years and what they have now come up with, I would have thought that the emphasis should really have been the issues that Kenyans really talk about all the time, the issue of cost of living. Really, they should have focused more on the soft issues, the cost of living, the issue of unemployment, and specifics on how they really intend to generate employment. Employment. They should have looked at the issue of health, which has been a major issue because of the frequent strikes and the crisis in hospitals and so forth. So you would think that the measurable targets that they seem to have, which would be easier for them, would be the infrastructure ones. For example, expanding the SGR, putting more kilometers on the road, the airports, and those would be easier. But I think food security, agriculture, the issue of health, those issues that really matter. You don't think they really apply? I think if you go through if you listen to the manifesto, you don't really see how significantly the manifesto would be different in terms of addressing particularly the issue of food security, because the same issues that have been listed last time are more or less the same ones, and they didn't really change the situation, agricultural sector, the crisis in the cereal sector, and so forth. So I would say they didn't come out very strongly really on those areas that really matter. Okay, I'll go sector specifics shortly, but Dr. Mia, let me get your initial comments on this.
Well, what I see, and thank you actually for this opportunity, what I see is the stress and emphasis on solving the unemployment problem. For me, it is very important because that touches the heart of people. The second one that strikes me is the issue about food security. Previously, we've been talking about agriculture as one of the sectors in the economic pillar of Vision 2030. But now we are being specific. We are saying not only agriculture, but we are saying let us stop the problem of having food insecurity in this country. So those to me do stand out. Of course, there are other areas that stand out very clearly in terms of how the manifesto is a follow-through on the previous manifesto.
Okay. Let's be sector specific now. And I'll begin with what you've both talked about, and that is jobs, and you've heard them saying several times, jobs, jobs, jobs. The promise is to create 1.3 million jobs annually. I think previously they said 1 million jobs annually. The average is about 800,000 jobs a year. And to do this, they'll establish at least one industry in every county. Jubilee has been criticized for a decline in the manufacturing industry. So now 1.3 million jobs yearly and one industry in every county. Is that practical? That means a very minimum 47 industries, average of 9 industries in 9 counties every year. Do you think that is practical?
No, I don't think so. I don't think it's the government's business to set up industries. Really, industries is the private sector that looks at the demand for a particular product or service or goods, and I don't think government can really, this day and age, determine that they want to put up. They can provide the environment really for the private sector to do that. They can look at private partnership, which really has not taken off, despite the regulations and everything being in place. The issue of employment, saying we have to be very practical. Despite the efforts being made by the government, particularly in terms of empowering the youth on the 30% for contracts and procurements and so forth, but in terms of employment, really, even the 800,000, 600,000 are the informal sector jobs. These are estimates. It's there. I mean, in the time of Quebec, they're always there. The additional jobs that we talk about really is not in the formal sector. It's more in the increase in public sector, particularly in the counties, where counties have really employed a large number of people. And the national government also did employ quite a bit. So I think that's why I'm saying that there isn't really, you know, just putting a number, but I don't think there is any significant measure that is measurable, or target that is measurable that addresses the issue of employment.
You don't think it's practical?
I don't think really. I think what this government has achieved more and can achieve more is to continue on empowering through the 30%, for youth and so forth, maybe. But in terms of employment creation, particularly enabling the private sector, when you look at the companies that have folded in this country in the last 4 years or 5 years, really, quite a number of countries, and you just look at the performance on Nairobi Stock Exchange, probably one of the worst in recent years, and it tells you the challenges that particularly the manufacturing sector has faced. Then even in the informal sector, with the crisis in the agriculture and the sugar, tea, milk, in many areas, you would think that really, these things are sector-based. Unless we address the issue of, they tried on tourism, but unless we address the challenges, for example, in the competitiveness and so forth in the manufacturing sector, you address the issue in agriculture sector. These are the key areas where you can think of an increasing employment, really. And I think those are areas we haven't performed very well.
Okay, Mr. Mayor. He doesn't think that they're doing well in unemployment or creating jobs.
Well, I'll look at unemployment from another point of view. And my starting point is, when we've been looking at the issue of creating employment, one of the things that we've been considering, and which is important, is that manufacturing, industrialization are going to be part of our mechanism of creating employment in the country. And that is why the government passed the Special Economic Zones Act 2015 and the regulation thereof. Because the intention was to create sections of the country where you've got territory that is specific to create manufacturing and enhance manufacturing. Granted, manufacturing hasn't done very well. It has stagnated since independence, actually. So for me, the solution to unemployment would partly be achieved through creating a lot of industries, and it is operationalizing that Special Economic Zones Act, which is important for us. And since it is fairly new, having been done in 2015, as we are doing now the medium-term plan 3, and also as the counties are doing their county integrated development plans, this is one area where, as a country, we've got to focus, because we cannot continue having the unemployment that we have. But then the other point is that a lot of businesses are micro and SMEs. One of the areas that has been showed by surveys is that we should look to increase and improve and facilitate the micro and small enterprises. This is one way in which we can look to address the problem of unemployment. And lastly, and related to all that, is the issue of what do we turn out in our universities and in our training institutions? Are we continuing to turn out job seekers, or do we turn it on its other side and start creating job seekers? That is where we will be able to solve the problem.
Infrastructure, again, a key component in the manifesto. I mean, it's what the government has been priding itself in over the last 4.5 years. Others, of course, we've had many criticize it that this is not paying off immediately, and it doesn't handle the soft problems facing Kenyans right now. Now, here are just some of the highlights in the manifesto. Again, very ambitious. Constructing a rail link from Lamu to Miritini, a road from Lamu to Isiolo, and complete the development of the remaining 29 berths in Lamu Port. Construct the Mombasa-Nairobi 6-lane highway toll road, which together with the SGR will transform the 450 kilometers between the two cities into one large and vibrant economic zone. Constructing the second phase of the SGR to Nairobi, from Nairobi through Naivasha, through Malaba, street lights in urban centers, and even in other sectors like sports, constructing of the stadia, that they've talked about. In agriculture, complete the 57 large-scale dam construction program. They also say by 2020, every Kenyan will be connected to electricity. So it is very, very ambitious in terms of infrastructure. Yet we already know the public debt right now in the country is about 4.1 trillion. The last budget the budget we're in right now, and the deficit is about 900 billion. So do you think they were clear enough in terms of funding? Do you think they're going to achieve this?
No, I think we Our governments in recent years have been very ambitious on public expenditure. And they've always been short on revenue generation. You look at this document that was launched today, there's very little on revenue side. Yeah. Particularly, they should have focused on how to enhance the revenue collection by KRA and address the issue of really KRA specifically, because debt has increased by nearly 3 trillion since Jubilee came to power. You know, I tend to think that the Jubilee must be basing all this appetite for loans and debt on maybe some inflows that I expect maybe from extractive industries, maybe like petroleum and so forth in future, because it's not really going to be sustainable. I mean, from this financial year coming, we'll probably be paying 50% of our revenues to service debt. About 600 billion will be spent just to service debt, and that would really leave only about 600 billion when your revenues are now going to probably next year it will be almost 2.8 to 3 trillion shilling. So you get into a situation where we are really living beyond our means to finance infrastructure. But again, when you look at the type of infrastructure, you would think the priorities are a bit because if SGR was the priority to really supplement or to substitute the road network, then I would have thought that they need to really focus more on expanding the SGR itself in terms of the locomotives and so forth. There's more use of the SGR, but when you want to now put up another railing again from Lamu, Meritini all the way, you want to put up again a 6-lane road on the same road that you have already put up a railway and throwing the trucks out of business, and so it kind of doesn't say how it will help, particularly in improving. It will create jobs. I mean that the short term, yes, but long term, I don't think it's properly planned. So that is my concern. But the debt is the single most important thing this government should really focus on, because that is going to undermine their performance significantly. Okay. Because servicing it is going to be a tall order.
Dr. Mayor.
Well, yeah, I agree that the issue of the debt is something that we should be careful and we should plan around it properly. But I want to jump onto the bigger projects, like if you talk about the LAPSET corridor, and I'm lucky I'm in the LAPSET Corridor Development Authority board, so I can talk as an insider. That project opening 2/3 of Kenya, it means that we are doubling the investment space in the country. And therefore, if we can transfer jobs, if we can transfer economic activity and try to relieve the northern corridor by having the LAPSET corridor operational, then you are talking of some significant economic expansion that we haven't factored in now. At the moment, we have a lot of interest from potential financiers to assist in the LAPSET corridor because it has been packaged properly, and that is an area which I think will help us significantly. I hear Senator's point of view about debt being a challenge. But, you know, I also look at it from a balance sheet point of view. When you are incurring this debt, are you creating assets or you are incurring the debt for consumption? Most of this debt is actually going into assets. Infrastructure has over 4 times multiplier effect. Any shilling you put in infrastructure, it will generate more than 4 times. So there is a good benefit in us looking at infrastructure and also looking at the bigger projects, because if we don't set stretch budgets, if the manifesto is not a stretch one, we will relax and things will not be done in a transformational way, because development in Kenya must be done using transformational frameworks which are business unusual.
Okay. Finally, I mean, we have a lot to discuss in terms of the Jubilee Manifesto because of time, and we'll be doing this all this week as NASA also launches the manifesto tomorrow. But the text I read earlier, this is James Ogutu in Migori, says, I have not had a plan put in place to fight corruption, which is the worst headache in Kenya. The jury is out there. You'll decide as a viewer whether it's the worst headache in Kenya right now or not, but for sure it has been a problem in this country. They've talked about some of the things they'll do. For example, increase the penalty to include jail time for economic crimes, and work with judiciary to ensure all economic crime cases are resolved within 6 months. Deploy an enhanced protection and reward framework for whistleblowers. Publish annual details of all the procurement awards for major government projects, and so on and so on. Do you think they've tackled enough in as far as good governance, accountability, and fighting corruption is concerned?
I think it's one of the areas that the Jubilee government has not performed well. It's the issue of governance, really. Not just on corruption. Corruption, of course, is the single biggest challenge this government has had and will probably have. Because many Kenyans will tell you probably this in terms of susceptibility to corruption. It's been the worst. But I think they have grappled with it and they haven't found a solution. If you look at that document, there isn't really much in terms of how they're going to deal with that, because it's the elephant in the room. Unless they deal with that, it undermines all other issues that they have tried to achieve. But generally in governance, I think it's an area that Jubilee needs to, because it also helps, you know, about the perception of the government. It's about the freedoms. For example, Jubilee has not endeared itself to Kenyans on how it addressed the issue of the Auditor General, for example. How it dealt with the civil society, how it dealt with the media, and so forth. And one would think that extrajudicial killings, like for example in northern Kenya. So if you look at it from governance, you know, you'd say that is an area that they have not. And like I said earlier, really on the Jubilee has been focusing more on the hardware side of things. And on the soft issues, they have not really done well. And I think it's an area that they need to. Because those are the things which touch the lives of Kenyans directly, in addition to, of course, the other issues that we have mentioned.
Yeah, Dr. Mwefende.
Yeah, well, governance in the Vision 2030 falls under the political pillar. And the big benefit that we have under that is devolution. What I would say with regard to dealing with the issues of governance going forward and whether it has been dealt with properly in the Jubilee manifesto is that this is an evolving engagement. Because there are institutions that have been set up and they are in the early stages, like the National Commission for Integration and Cohesion. Those are institutions that are at the early stages. So if we can push more resources, push more effort to make sure that those institutions can do that which they are set up to do, including enforcing Chapter 6, including also the national values and principles of governance, and also the sector of national values and ethics, that would help. But I think a lot more needs to be done on the area of governance.
What about corruption? Are you satisfied with what you're saying, the Jubilee Manifesto, as far as fighting corruption is concerned? Well, because it has been a problem.
Corruption is a behavior thing, and it goes all across the country, the people. And one looking at the nuts and bolts and the nuggets within the manifesto, we'll have to identify and check whether it is dealt with properly. The manifesto having been released today, we haven't had enough time to interact with it, but where I sit, I think corruption is something that we should deal with seriously, because it erodes a lot of things and a lot of gains that we have made in the country.
That's Dr. Julius Moyes, the Director General of the Kenya Vision 2030 Delivery Secretariat, and below Kero is the Mandera County Center. Thank you so much for making time for us tonight. Keep talking to us. The hashtag is Monday Special KE on Twitter. You can text us on 22422. We're back with your feedback after this.